still starting. There we go.
I was working on posting on Instagram,
Oh.
but I guess I'll wait.
What were you going to post on Instagram?
The video of fabric.
Oh, yeah. We've been playing with pretty fabric today. It's been fun. All right, are we live? Maybe. We'll think about it.
I'm trying this out on my iPad today so I can read things.
So the comments aren't teeny tiny. That would be fun.
There we go.
Hey, check that out.
As long as the volume doesn't work, we're good.
Yeah, I don't want to
Hey,
listen
Christine.
to us.
All right.
I really don't want to listen to us.
No, but my kids have been playing school stuff and all sorts of things on every device we own because
Right.
that's how things go.
Right.
Hello, welcome, my friends.
It's live right now.
Hey, Susie.
Yay.
Welcome. We're gonna give it just a minute to get. Hey, Bonnie, to get people
Not too
on.
long. Liz is gonna do a lot of the talking
I'm
tonight
gonna.
while
Hey, Jerseyville, Illinois. Where is that? Because I lived in Illinois for like 10 years and I've never heard of that one. But welcome, Beth. Nice to have fun, new people.
your
my
volume is
on. See?
You don't need to listen to us.
Yeah, good night. Okay, there we go. No more. Hey, Catherine. Okay, so tonight we're going to talk interfacing applique. We call it the Lori Holt method
Because that's how most of our projects do
what
it.
she uses.
It's been around for a very long time. Prior to using interfacing, a lot of people used muslin. By St. Louis. Oh, by St. Louis.
Oh, by St. Louis. Got it. My
Yeah, she
husband
was
would know it then.
further north.
I was in the Chicago area. But he lives in
So,
Springfield.
interfacing is just a lighter weight than muslin and
A little bit easier to use and cheaper.
And cheaper.
And
So-
friendlier with my needle.
all better.
So.
So that's why we use that now. What
But-
we're going to be making is, let me scoot this over. We're going to be making this little block off of this quilt,
I
or
don't
at
know
least
if they
that's
can
what I'm
see
going to be
that.
making. You can sew along with me if you have the shapes from Granny's Garden. Liz will tell you what I'm talking about when I talk about shapes. If you don't have the shapes,
Oh, hello,
that's
Miss
fine.
Amy, too.
whatever shapes you have, or you can just draw, or you can
Or just
figure
watch
out how
and
to
figure
glitter
out
and
what this is.
watch and learn.
Totally great.
When I do this, first step, because I'm going to start sewing for a second while she talks, is I shorten my stitch length.
Ooh, first timer. We
So-
love new first timers. Welcome, Stan.
So I'm going to
And
be
reset.
at, well, on a
And
standard
renee.
machine it would be like 1.8. This one it's like 18, 20, probably closer to 20.
Short stitches.
Short
Folks,
stitches.
Even a little bit shorter maybe than what you normally quilt with.
It allows me to get the really small shapes like my circle and leaf. I did. It's hot. And my burn is finally healing from last time, so I'd
Yeah.
rather not do that again.
Okay, so when she talks shapes, Lori always uses shapes. A lot of other designers and patterns will have the drawn image for you to trace. Both the same thing. Lori uses shapes because you trace it. Ooh, more California, welcome. So these are just shapes that are cut out and labeled on template plastic. She marks them because then they're reusable and you have this hard thing to trace instead of trying to look through and draw a line.
And Liz can actually trace this one for me.
So, anyway, so these are what she's talking about with shapes.
These are the shapes.
If your pattern involves just something to trace, same thing, you would just trace it onto the applique. When we're doing onto the interfacing, when we're doing the interfacing method, you do not need to add a 1/4 inch seam allowance.
No 1/4 inch seam allowance. You do
Because-
for needle turn and freezer paper, but
But
this.
that is not a factor in this applique method. So you just trace the shape exactly as it is. So now she doesn't need the shape anymore.
Now I
And
have
she has her
this.
shape.
When it comes time to sew this, go ahead and grab that if you want to.
She is
but I'll do it
good.
in a
This
minute.
is a fun block.
When it comes time to sew this, I'm going to do like what I'm doing on this one right here. I'm literally sewing on the line. So it's about as easy as sewing goes. You sew on the line. Like with driving, if you look at the line as it's getting to your needle, you're going to be wobbly. you need to be looking an inch or two out to see where you're going.
Also, if you have an open toe foot for your machine,
please, this is the time to use it.
This is when you would for sure want to use it here. You're
nice
tracing it onto the interfacing, Bonnie. So I traced this shape onto the interfacing. Yep. So the open toe on the foot lets you see exactly where your needle is going to punch down. If you have the pin dot hole on the foot, you can't see exactly where your needle's hitting.
And it's harder to keep
And
track
so it's nice to have the open toe so you can see where you're going.
Yeah.
So a lot of like Lori's projects involve you just tracing straight onto regular
like
just sewing the interfacing to a regular piece of fabric. Okay. Once in a while, she gets all cray-cray on us.
I have to turn it around so they can
see. This is a pinwheel block, you guys. We're going to make this flower out of this pinwheel. Okay?
And it's going to be awesome.
And it's
adorable.
This block.
Well, there's that one that's single-colored, but this one's multicolored.
This one is multicolored, and you can see that she did the same thing here. So we made a pinwheel, and it's gorgeous. This one's called Farm Sweet Farm. If you're not familiar, this is Granny's Garden. Both of which are past sew-alongs and were sold out. I do have kits though for her current sew-along, which is Vintage Housewife,
which is super cute. And we're doing pre-orders right now for Prim.
Ooh, Prim, which is going to be
so pretty.
Anyway,
trace that for me.
Yeah, I'll do that.
Another thing you'll use sometimes is an acrylic template. So I have these round circle rulers. So this time I need exactly a 4-inch circle.
So we just have this ruler that can be reused for 1,000 different things.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, but while I'm going to talk interfacing,
yep.
So what Lori originally used is this one. This is the Pellin Sew-In Interfacing. It's the featherweight weight of it. Mm-hmm. This package is 3 yards,
and it's
$2.99, and it works well. It was what Lori originally used in her first sew-alongs. You will see her.
I used it for my entire.
I used it for all of Autumn Love.
See, and I didn't use it for Autumn Love, but I did use it for Cozy Christmas. It works. It's a lot lighter weight, so it's really easy to punch through it. Especially for the small shapes.
But it is totally a valid option, and like I said, it's $2.99 for a package. This is Lori's Fancy Sew-In Interfacing,
which she designed with Pellin.
So it is a Pellin product.
Designed specifically to do this.
It is somewhere, in my opinion, between the Pellin Featherweight and the Pellin Midweight Interfacing. Mm-hmm. I've got a whole video about this on Instagram, and I think our Facebook page too, from like 2 years ago, where I compared and contrasted all the featherweight, the featherweight, Lori's version, and the midweight. The difference, the midweight gets kind of stiff and it's hard to work with. Mm-hmm. So I don't recommend it very much. It is a cheaper option. It's closer to this price point, but it's on the bulk. This one is great, and like I said, Lori designed it with Pellin to do this project. So what it is it's more pliable than the midweight interfacing, but it's less apt to tear than the featherweight. And so it really is that happy medium. But it's $12.99 a package versus $2.99 a package. Right. So it's good. I do buy it myself, and I do use it.
I use a mixture.
But I use a mixture, and I'll explain that. You keep sewing.
Okay. I'm like, on this quilt, I used both.
And I will tell you where I split them up. Because to me, that's... Jen and I love to quilt and love to do a lot of things. We're also fairly frugal.
Yeah.
And because I like quality products, I like to make them go as far as I can.
Yep.
So, what we do on your big shapes, like the big tortillas.
Like my big circle here.
On this guy. We're going to use the cheap stuff.
Right.
Because it does the job. It doesn't add bulk.
Mm-hmm.
And you don't need the expensive stuff. People were buying 4 packages of this to make this quilt. Yeah. And it's not necessary. Because all of those tortillas can be done out of this.
I needed 2 of those packages for all my tortillas.
And it's just so much cheaper. So,
they're technically supposed to be plates. You know, like the plates you collect with pretty flowers painted on
Yes,
them.
but they look like tortillas. The other shapes that I use that on, your bigger circle here, like even these trees on Farm Sweet Farm, I would. A lot of your
large, simple shapes.
Even these ovals, I don't know if you can see them down here. This one I might. Anything that doesn't have a super strong point to it, or a whole bunch of points, or a small shape. Now, if I'm going to do my little leaf, these tear so easily with a featherweight interfacing that I would insist on using Lori's interfacing.
Absolutely.
Because
especially on small projects.
Way better. This guy, same thing. There's all those cute little points. I mean, they don't look like points, but they kind of are. And so you would want to.
Right.
Okay? Does that make... I hope that makes sense. If you have questions about interfacing, I'm happy to help you. But for your sanity and mine, these projects are a lot of fun, but they can get really pricey. And so I don't use the medium weight, but I do use a mixture of Lori's and the regular Pellin featherweight sewing. Right. And so that would be my idea. See, even like this tortilla, not tortilla, it's a circle.
I used the lightweight because it's a very simple shape.
Okay. The next thing I'm going to point out, this point-to-point turner, you can use pretty much, everyone's got their tool or their trick to turning shapes. Lori pushes this one, but I do too. And the reason is I use both ends.
Yep.
This curved end is fantastic for getting in here
and getting a nice curve without
circles.
Because poking it.
You know what? I can stretch the fabric a little bit. So even if my stitch isn't perfect, you can stretch that fabric. And the point on the back of that curve does an amazing job
at
rounding things out. When you are... Okay. Jen didn't show you what she did with this, so I'm going to show you in just a sec on the big guy. Yes, exactly, Naomi. That's what I do. Let's see.
Yep.
Okay, now I'm going to press it, and we have our perfect little circle.
And when you press these, please press them on the fabric, not on the interfacing.
No, don't press the interfacing.
Because that hot cotton setting on the interfacing is going to make it go all shrivelly.
Yes, Judy. Oh, Judy, so happy to see you.
Yay, Judy!
Okay,
how are you?
This is the big guy, so it's not really fancy to show you, but I'm going to show you what I do. First of all, I start with a seam ripper. And the reason I do that is because it's safe. I can poke in, and I can see where I poked into. I didn't poke in through the fabric, and I just got in through the interfacing. Okay? And I'm going to do that, see the top, and make a little tear.
And that's not a big deal in the big shapes like this.
With my seam ripper.
I'll show you how to do that with scissors on this one. But especially when we're doing little shapes like those leaves.
It's so easy to poke through.
It's so easy to just cut your fabric.
Okay, and now I'm going to take my scissors and cut a little X in it.
An X, not a slit.
Not a slit, an X. Because it will... I know it doesn't show
on
the big piece.
You're going to, like, rip it long.
And because this one's big, I can turn the whole thing.
Right.
And we'll turn that little tiny leaf in just a minute so you can see.
Yep, I left that leaf unturned because I wanted to show you.
So now I take my fingers through it. I'm just going to take my finger and round all those edges out. And smooth them out. Oh, do you know what we did?
What?
I didn't trim this. Oh,
well, you should trim the
Good
circle.
night. I was like, why is there so much bulk?
Okay, while she trims the circle, I'm going to tell you a couple things about sewing these shapes. First of all, don't start at a point. So like with the leaf, the tendency would be to want to start at the bottom, sew around, and end at the bottom. The problem is you're going to end up with a gap, and that could be really easy to poke through. So like for this big flower, where I'm starting is out here on the tip. And so rather than backstitch when I get to the end, I'm just going to go over my start point by just a couple of stitches.
You want to make sure you're not losing your stitches on this.
The next thing I'm going to do to keep these little cleavages where I want them to be,
where those little inlets come
rather than dropping my needle, we do this, right? We drop our needle all the way down, pick up our foot, and rotate.
Don't do halfway through a stitch.
Because if you understand the mechanics of a sewing machine, you'll understand that you're halfway through the stitch. And doing that is not a way to make sure you get that sharp corner. What you want to do is lower your needle to where it is barely holding the fabric
It's
down.
like touching the
It's
top
not
of the fabric.
getting down in. The point of the needle is not down through your needle, through your plate here. It's just holding the top of the fabric. And then pick it up, gently pivot, and then keep going. Because with the mechanics of a sewing machine, if you're all the way down, you're halfway through your stitch formation.
And then you have a stretched out stitch in that cleavage.
And you don't want that. That's a good way to lose the point.
Yes.
Rather than preserve it.
Okay, so I've trimmed this. I'm going to use my turner and smooth out my edges. When you do this, you want to be using the turner on the fabric, not the interfacing. So when you've got that seam in there, I'm pushing on the fabric side.
The stitch through between the seam and the outer fabric.
So where the fold is essentially on the fabric.
Yep.
But you don't want to push on the interfacing or you're going to tear a hole in it.
You're going to blow right through it. Okay. Sorry, one more thing about sewing. You might notice the way I'm holding my hand down. Rather than do a couple stitches and pick it up, I use at least 2, if not 4 fingers to gently rotate the fabric as I feed it through.
This takes practice, you guys.
It says you get a
Doing
feel
intricate
for it.
shapes takes practice, but don't try and go fast. It won't.
No, you get a feel for it. I mean, that's one of the reasons I love doing this on my featherweight, because this flywheel over here is so easy for me to turn with just a finger. So I can easily get my first or second stitch that way.
Yep.
But you go kind of slow, and I just use my fingers to press down to get that to rotate. Just how I want it to.
You don't want to force it. You don't
and
want
see, this one, I went a little bit too far to where that I wasn't going to do that, so I just kind of picked up my foot and moved it back. And then I get to keep my point.
Yep. Just like that. But that's interfacing, shapes, turning. We're going to show you when we go in to trim this one. I'm going to, if you've sewn apparel,
you understand
clipping cleavages and notching the seam allowance so that it can turn or shape or hold its shape.
And the
shape
only
you want it
clips we're going to have to do on this one, probably
you're just going to have one
a minute
clip.
early to talk about it, are you only need to clip inner curves. Anything outer, so like a circle, anything that's an outer curve, it's going to fold in just fine. You don't need to clip all along that.
It's the opposite of apparel in that sense. Also, on this little tiny leaf, I know it's hard to see, but she clipped in really close to the point.
You can see it better where the line is.
Her seam
Rather
allowance.
than going all the way up like this, I almost cut it off to the stitch. And that's because removing bulk at the point is going to allow me to keep my point.
I would say that's the only way to have a point.
So,
here, I'll do this.
Like she showed you while she trims that up, just going to use my seam ripper, get barely underneath here and cut a little slit. Once I've got a slit, I can take my scissors and cut a little X. Now this is a small shape, you guys. I mean, it's small. The piece I started with was a 1.5 inch by 3 inch rectangle. So what I do is I just kind of gently separate them a little bit. Use your fingers and let them roll through it, okay? And then I take my pinky, because that's my littlest one, right? And stick it inside. Then I'm going to use my thumb, you know, opposing it, you know, opposable thumbs, what separates us from other animals. And I'm going to push against my pinky finger. And with this other end, I'm going to pull, and then I'll rotate it around and push it through. And now I've got some of it out. And once you have some of it out, then you just kind of gently, with your fingers, again, I'm just rolling to get that out.
You want to be careful that you're not tearing the interfacing.
Or really stretching the fabric.
Or stretching the fabric, because you can do that a lot.
So just use your fingers and gently work it through. Now, I'm going to use my...
Sorry, Susanna, it's hard for us to go move the camera a lot.
And then I'm going to use my point-to-point turner. Honestly, this is the benefit of an in-shop class, because I would be like standing over your shoulder. But this is what we can do with where we're at. And just gently work that curve. Now, you'll notice that even with a point-to-point turner, I can't push all the way to get that corner, that point out.
A blunt end.
So, honestly, this is my fancy method. I take a pin
from the outside. I might get close to the camera and show them that.
I will. Sorry, you guys are going to have to deal with my terrible fingers. Oh, it's blurry. Come on, camera. Ooh. Oh, I got it to focus on me. Crud. Keeps wanting to focus on you, Liz.
Sorry.
Get out of the way.
There's your fingers.
Oh, it did it again.
There.
Get out of the way, Liz.
Sorry.
Ah, there we go. She's got to stay out of the way. Anyway, I'm just going to gently... Oh, it's terrible. Pull this out.
Sorry, this is the class setting with no official camera crew.
Right. See, once I put my other finger in there. Anyway.
She's getting in there with a pin and gently pulling the fabric
She's gently
out.
pulling a tiny bit at a time. I mean, we're talking a 32nd of an inch gets pulled out at a time.
Okay. I just clipped these little cleavages right here almost to the seam.
Don't clip your seam.
Don't clip the seam, but I clipped pretty close.
Yeah, see,
on a lot of them.
See, and now I have a point. It's kind of awesome. So, but you do that really gently, or it's really easy to rip your fabric. Like, I ripped a tiny bit of interfacing, not a lot, but I'm just going to trim that off.
And the thing is, if you rip a little bit of interfacing, not a big deal. Plus, once you iron it, you can get it to get its shape back.
Right. Honestly, I love the wool pressing mats for this because
they get all the way through the
they get nice and flat. Really, really nice and flat. Alright, I'm going to grab this guy.
So we are going to show some assembly, how to put these blocks together.
It's going to be awesome. Okay, using a design board is really helpful with layering these because I could pin right into it. And pinning is awesome.
A design board, if you don't know what that is, it's a piece of foam core.
Foam core. I still have the label.
With batting glued to the front. I use Elmer's spray adhesive.
Right, because then it's nice and flat.
And then we just hot glued some binding around the edge because it's cute.
Right. But it finishes off. We have big ones in the classroom that are duct tape. Or you could just leave it raw. It doesn't really matter.
But the foam core is really helpful in this situation.
So what I can do
is... This is a Durabuilt vintage folding travel iron.
It is vintage.
It is definitely vintage. They get nice and hot. The handle folds right down and they travel well.
Yep.
And they're it's nice and hot.
Nice and hot. We love it hot. Okay, so this is the bottom.
Okay.
Now when I'm doing one like this where it's multiple layers, okay, so for instance, when I did the animal blocks here, I put all of this down, I glued it down, and then I sewed it down. There was no real layering going on. I mean, the goat's body overlapped the legs a tiny bit, but it wasn't worth doing separately. I just glued it all at once. Now, with some of these flowers, like this one, there are several layers here. You know, we've got the heart and leaves and stem onto this background, which then goes onto this background, which then goes onto this blue star background, which then goes onto the plate background, which then goes on to the background. How many backgrounds is that? Lots.
A lot.
Anyway, so hand stitching through all of those layers at once would be ridiculous. Be very hard on your hands. And it's just silly. So don't do that. What I'm going to do for putting this together, I did a lot on this project, and that is I'm going to put it together in layers, in sets.
Look how cute!
I love this block. That's why I made this one, because I wanted it again.
You can get out your little measuring thing and make sure that's dead center if you want to.
Okay, but that's what, see this right here, this is called a trim it up ruler. It's awesome for a project like this because I can line it up with my, turn.
She's got the line here and here, and she can
So
see where she's...
I've got my pinwheel axes here, and here, and here, and here. And so I can be like, okay, do I have half an inch or 3/4 of an inch or whatever between the edge of this flower petal and my plate and center it on. But right now I'm not that worried about putting it centered on the plate because, well, I'm not putting that part down yet. So the next layer on this one,
Don't burn yourself.
you can actually turn that off. We're done.
Oh, that's true. We are.
Um,
With the iron.
the next
Did you do the leaf?
layer,
You did.
I did, is this guy. He would go in the middle right here. The nice thing about it is it's the same shape as the outer one, so I can just, without using my ruler, line up all the little cleavages. The next one is this guy, who goes in the center of that one. This one, it's a small enough amount that honestly I can eyeball that. If you're not comfortable eyeballing that, again, having a ruler with a grid like this on it is really helpful to really center things properly.
The reason she has the 10.5-inch squared up ruler is because this block is 10.5 inches. All of these
blocks finished at 10.5 inches, and so I bought the ruler.
Something that Lori does with a lot of her applique that not everyone does is that when she has you cut the block that this goes down onto, she has you cut it big so that you can square it up. Because when you do all of this applique work on top of that block, generally it gets slightly distorted and shrinks a little.
You can shrink a little, the edges can fray, because, I mean, I take it to dance class and
so,
OT and everywhere. So
if you're translating a different project into this, so you do that. I'm going to grab a different project.
Okay, yeah, if you're translating a different project into this method, you might have to allow a little more room in your background piece that you're going to applique onto. Like this.
So I just finished
Halloween figs.
And there's some applique blocks in here. Joanna Figueroa is a brilliant designer, and I love her, but she uses freezer paper and starch, and I'd rather
She doesn't like that one.
So on her applique blocks, I went ahead and used the interfacing method because it makes me happy. And she had you cut this block to just the right size when in the cutting instructions, and I deliberately cut it 1/2 inch bigger. Because I'm used to this method. And so when I got done, I just trimmed it up.
Right.
And then it fit perfectly into my quilt. And then I can make sure it's perfectly square. So if you're translating, and you don't have to use the trim it up ruler, use whatever size ruler you've got. Like,
it doesn't have to be the specific one.
No.
I bought the specialty one for
They're
this
nice
project.
for these projects, for the Lori Holt ones. They really are. For other stuff, I just use my general ruler. But, anyway, my point is you can translate this method into any project, but look at the cutting instructions, because I really do like having that extra so that, because I have yet to have a block finish the exact same size and shape.
I mean, sometimes it's pretty
perfectly
close, but it's not really perfect.
Yeah.
Because, you know, we're human. It's sad, but we're human. So for my little flower stem, I'm using bias tape. Now this is... I just made a whole bunch of it at once for this project because as fun as it is to make a 2.5 inch piece over and over and over again, I just made a ton and put it on my little wooden spool.
If you're unfamiliar,
you need to fold this over
with making bias tape. When you're using bias tape though in an applique project, generally speaking, you only need one finished end depending on what it is.
Right.
So like on all of these blocks, this end is folded under. This end is covered. Is raw because it's covered underneath the heart or the flower or whatever it is. So all of these flowers on here.
So I pressed one end under so that it will
be finished.
And the other one is just going to get hidden by my flowers, so we're not worried about it.
So we make bias tape, generally speaking, using the Clover bias tape makers.
It's a very simple way to do it.
They are measured in millimeters.
Right.
Everything you ever get asked for is going to be in inches and 1/4 inch, 3/8, whatever. And I do the math over and over again on my phone. Or actually, I ask Google.
Actually, what I do is I grab my bias tape maker and I lay it on my mat. Like, oh, that was about 1/4 inch. Or I'll grab this one and be like, okay, so that one's like 1/2.
I wish that I could buy a 1/4 inch bias tape maker, but I have never seen one. So yeah, seriously, Angie, don't feel bad. We measure, you know, I square up over and over and over again because
That's
if
how you get
don't-
things properly.
Yeah,
It's
it's
just
the only way to go.
it is.
It's tedious. I know. I am not good at tedious. Well, I am. Okay.
She doesn't think she likes tedium.
I
She likes certain tedium.
am seriously ADD, and so doing some things over and over again is enough to make me go batty. But for some reason in quilting, it doesn't.
Well, it's like my husband who
So.
is seriously ADHD, but he loves like weeding the garden because.
But I can square things up.
Right.
It makes me happy.
Okay.
And trim things. But you use these bias tape makers to make the bias tape. You can buy some bias tape. It's always weird fabric. I don't like them.
And it doesn't always match. So.
There you go. Judy, see, you're smarter than me. She writes it on the bias tape maker.
Oh, you mean use a Sharpie and just not have to worry about it again? What a weird idea. That's Judy.
Good night.
I love it. I love it. This is why
Okay.
we keep you. Just kidding, because we love you. But you know.
Okay, Jenny's using applique glue. So we are going to stitch all of this down.
Right. This is a temporary adhesive. It's water soluble. So
It
you
will
wash
come
the
off.
quilts, it'll go away.
This is not permanent. But what it does is it keeps things in place. The glue she's using right now is Jill Finley's glue.
And actually,
comes
before I
in-
glue everything else, I'm going to lay it out and make sure
You
I
need
like
to
it.
pin it and lay it out. It comes in this bottle with this nice big neck on it.
Mm-hmm.
The one I use mostly is the Sue glue. So for Sue Daily. Honestly, I think they're probably both the same thing.
They're honestly, I've used both. I don't
And
see
they're
a difference.
both good.
I buy whatever's in stock at the time.
One of the things, yeah, I would say, we tend to run out of applique glue over and over and over again.
Right.
So Jen's got her little pins here.
Okay,
and
so
she's supposed to show
what
you
you
what she's using
do,
them for.
sorry, when you lay this out, because I can't glue every layer at once, it's a good idea. I'm going to put this up on here. That's the lid, so it doesn't dry
We
out.
do some acupuncture.
Ooh,
Oh, I've heard about the Roxanne base.
we have some.
We
We just got some in. We got it because our wool ladies wanted it.
Yes, I was gonna say I had people specifically ask for it.
So I'll put a couple pins in, you know, especially when I'm looking at like these little
When
leaves,
you're doing a
leaves
project
right here, where I want to make sure they're both going up at, you know, like the same angle so they don't look weird.
When I'm doing a project like this,
Especially big
and I've got
blocks.
these big long stems and all these little leaves, and everything's got to fit into this little spot just right,
Mm-hmm.
I am going to pin it all down, and you just stick your pin straight in, and then
Stick it straight through to my board. Now, I want you to see where I pinned. I didn't pin outside on the edges because what I'm actually going to do
is leave it pinned.
Leave it pinned and put a couple of dots of glue underneath here. And my glue is being weird.
Very cool. I'm gonna have to try that someday, Patricia. I have heard good things, but I have not tried it.
Of what?
The Roxanne. Just
Yeah.
like the accordion.
Yes, we have
Bottle.
it. It's over there by
Where
the
did I
counter.
find it?
Go get it.
I've never seen it.
It's by the Sue glue
Oh,
and
okay.
Jill's glue.
Oh, yes.
It's got the accordion. So you'll see I'm not putting a lot of glue, just a little drop here and there. This is not meant to hold it forever. It's meant to hold it until I sew it down.
Look at all that. So we did. There's the Roxanne.
So
That's the accordion bottle. That's fun.
and that's the
Okay,
big
I
one.
really love this big long metal neck
It's really
with a
nice.
stopper on it.
It's really nice for the
And a little cleaner thing.
yeah, it's got everything.
Okay, that's cool. I'm gonna have to try this next time I run out of glue.
Next time you run out of glue, you
Very
know where
cool.
to go. Okay, so I glued that down, and if I were at home, I would now walk away and go eat breakfast, and then come back and do this.
What I would do, this is Liz.
Right.
I'm gonna unpin it.
Right. I was gonna show my cheater fast way.
I know. And I'm gonna take a ruler and stick it on there.
Right.
If Jen gets out of the way.
Ah.
And then I have some nice big heavy books.
Right. That I put on here to let it smash.
Which is
That's
not
very
heavy.
lightweight. But I just let it smash it.
Here. Because then it all gets glued down nice and flat. Nothing's curled up
But I'm gonna show you the speeded up
and
method.
dries it off. Jen's gonna
The
make it go
speeded
faster
up method of drying your glue is
using an iron.
a hot iron.
You had me turn it off.
It's
not
still hot. It's warm enough to dry glue.
Okay, fine.
Okay.
So she's... Did
So
you
now-
glue that one?
I didn't glue any of that because we're doing layers.
Oh, yeah.
Okay. So now I have my first little piece. These I will glue each layer as I go, but we're not going to do that tonight because I'm not going to hand out all this in the next 24 minutes.
Yes.
Let's not be crazy.
Won't enjoy that.
Right. So
she's got her thread.
Thread. Let's talk thread for a second. Hand me my thread back. It's up
Where is
here.
it? Oh.
So there are a couple of different kinds of thread that I like to use when it comes to doing this hand applique. Do you have a question?
Elsie, you back? You good?
You back? Okay.
Anyway.
The first thread I like to use, this is an Aurifil 80 weight thread. It comes on a little tiny spool like
It's on
this.
a wooden spool.
It's on a wooden
Not
spool.
the orange spool.
If it's on an orange spool,
It's
it's
50
50 weight. This little wooden spool, not this quilt, but it made my Farm Sweet Farm and my Autumn Love quilt and made it through several of my classes with all of my class members using it before I killed it off.
There's a lot of thread.
It's very fine
on that
stuff.
thing.
So
And it's like $8, $7.
Yeah. It's like $7 and you're like, oh my gosh, for that spool, it does a lot.
It's 80 weight. It is super fine.
Super fine. I use mostly the cream, but I did get it in some other neutral colors. But I do really like this
I've
thread.
done 2 full quilts in only cream.
Right. This quilt right here says Autumn Love. Even with my dark little sheepies, we're done with just the Aurifil cream. And it works. It works just fine. I mean,
part of it is because it's 80 weight. It's super fine. And
Super
so
fine. And I'm stitching really close to the edge.
And it blends because it's so fine.
Because it's
You end up seeing, it happens on quilting a lot when I use a cream thread that's a 60 weight. You end up seeing the color behind it almost through the thread.
Right.
So even if you can see the thread, you're not really seeing the thread because it's so fine.
Yep.
Now, don't sew on your machine with it.
Please don't. It'll break.
It's too
Over
fine.
and over and
It's
over
going to
again.
break. I don't bind my quilts with it.
Nope.
But for applique,
That's what I use.
it's fantastic.
The next kind of thread I like is, this is 100% cotton. The Aurifil is 100% cotton. This is a Wonderfil thread. It's called Invisifil. It is a polyester thread and it's a 100 weight. So it's very fine. It's like your silk thread. It comes in a lot of colors. Sarita just ordered some more boxes of it for me. Well, for the shop, but also for me because I wanted some more. Again, it's 100 weight, so there's a lot of thread on a spool. And I tend to pull really hard when I do any handwork, whether that's knitting, crocheting, sewing, binding.
So
I pull hard, and this doesn't snap as easily as the Aurifil does.
fine
It's
thread is durable, especially if you're using a poly.
This
Poly is
thread
stronger than cotton.
is going to be stronger than the cotton. Period.
It is durable. This will hold up to washing. But generally speaking, this quilt is not going to get washed
My kids aren't picnicking on this sucker
as much as some of the other quilts I make.
Mm-hmm.
So if you are planning on seriously heavy duty using this quilt, you might use a heavier weight thread.
Or
But
you might machine stitch it down.
at the same time, I then machine quilt the thing. Because well, I long arm it. And so even here, you're outlining shapes. You're still going to tack a few things down.
Right. All of my animals here have something tacked down on them.
So the quilting is also going to help.
You know, my bigger trees, I went over on all of these plates, even though it doesn't look like they're quilted on.
They are.
There
There are
is
certain
some
shapes on them all
quilting.
quilted.
Holding that down.
And so now if I went at it and really tried to rip it off, I probably eventually could. But I don't think
It's
that
going to
it's...
take some work.
Yeah.
It's gonna
I
take
feel
some work.
like it's pretty... I feel like it's really durable. Like I said, I can break it sometimes if I'm pulling really hard to do the applique. But that's not with a brand new piece of thread. That's a piece of thread that I've worn because I've
Right, that I've run through
been
a few
using.
times.
And because I pulled really hard on the whole length of the thread. Which you can't do when it's applique down to a
Is
quilt.
also why I have probably 18 inches total on this needle.
Does that answer that question?
Including the fold. I keep very short lengths of thread on my needle because I need to, if I use a long one, I'm going to snap it.
Well, or you eventually wear it.
You wear it out.
You can wear it your thread, and especially cotton thread.
And then I have to like back up and go back over the spot. And that's just work. So I don't like to do that.
Yep. I'm going to bring that in.
Yeah, you get the camera in so they can see how I stitch.
And we're going to talk stitching.
We're going to talk stitching. I threaded 2 needles because
here
I'm going to show you 2 different stitches that I like to use. The first one here is a very, very traditional applique stitch. Like this?
Yeah, stay right there.
Okay. This is a stitch I use for binding and applique. What you're going to do is you're just going to grab the back all the way through to the interfacing. You can see that little stitch going on the back.
This adds to the strength too. The more layers you go through,
and
the stronger
then I'm
your
going
stitch is
all
be.
the way through. So I am going through both layers of interfacing on the back and both layers, not both, the fabric and interfacing, and then on my leaf, the fabric and interfacing. You'll see I am right next to my seam. I mean, we're talking maybe a 32nd of an inch in. And my stitches are maybe about 1/8 of an inch long.
Yeah.
So
if you can get about 8 stitches to an inch, you're doing really good.
If they're
6
not
is
quite,
probably still sufficient.
6 is adequate. 6 is definitely adequate. 8 is better.
You don't need to try and get 20.
Right. And some people do. They go a little crazy with it. Don't do like 6 loose stitches and then pull tight. That's one of the benefits of having a short length of thread, is it's really easy to pull tight with each stitch. So that's the basic stitch that I like to use. Let's see. Yep. Okay. So as far as needles go, use whatever is comfortable in your hand and you can thread. I like the Bowen applique needles, which are these. That's my favorite because they're a size 11. They're a fairly short needle and they're nice and sharp. So that's my personal preference. That being said, needles are totally a personal choice. There is not a right answer to that question.
One of the biggest things with needles, are you done with that?
Well, I'm going to do the yellow.
Okay, we'll let her keep going. One of the biggest things with needles is that you have to be able to hold it and thread it.
Right.
And
if
so
you can't do either of those things, then that needle doesn't work for you.
I love super fine, short milliner's needles. They make me happy, and they are next to impossible to thread for a lot of people.
Right.
So what works for me may not work for you. Find a needle you're comfortable with. Now, that said, please don't use an embroidery needle.
Right.
That is not...
It's not
you don't need
work.
a big fat needle. You don't want to poke huge holes through your fabric. You don't have to.
Alright, I'm going to show you the other stitch I like to use on this little circle, and the reason for that is because you can still see some little jagged spots on my circle. That's life. That happens. This is how I round them out.
This
so
is
again,
a stitch Jen, I think, made up because it's the only place I've ever seen it.
It's a real one.
She calls it a ladder stitch.
It's a ladder stitch.
But if you Google ladder stitch, you will probably find an applique stitch.
I didn't make my
She
not
make
big
her
enough.
not.
Whoops. We'll just make another one. Anyway, so
same thing. Start at the back.
Start
go
at
all
the
way
back,
through.
go through, come out the top. Now, with this stitch, I'm working one fabric at a time.
Okay, they can't see that.
Okay.
Can you see?
Am I in a good place?
Yell at us if you can.
All right.
Well, yell at Jen because I can't see.
I'm just going to come up through the back. And then I'm going to run along the fold right here of just the yellow.
See, she's got about 1/8 of an
circle.
inch there.
And then I'm going to go...
She's going to go down through the fabric.
I'm only working one fabric at a time. The benefit of doing this is I'm really grabbing the sides of the fabric. And because of that, I can adjust the shape just a little bit. So if I have a spot that's sticking out, like right here, what I would do is put my needle in here and come out there, and that would round off that little point. So I honestly, on my granny's garden, the only place I did this stitch Oh, I just did an applique stitch. The only place I did this stitch on my granny's garden was on my little tiny circles, because it just helps me
round them out
a little bit better. So through the top fabric, through the back.
But the applique stitch, blind stitch, ladder stitch.
Some people like to do a blanket stitch all the way around.
Yes, you can do a decorative stitch, a blanket stitch. You can also machine stitch these down.
Right. Some people I know like to just do a straight line or a blanket stitch on their machine. Some people like to do a narrow zigzag. It is totally 100% up to you how you sew it down. You're probably aware of this if you watched anything we've done. Go ahead and pull back. I like handwork. I just do. I like handwork. It's fun for me. So that's my personal preference.
Sorry, we were zooming in on your boobs.
Don't do that.
It was not intentional.
Sure.
Okay.
I like handwork, so I enjoy doing this. I do like these projects because, you know, during the stitching down phase like this, it's absolutely portable.
Okay.
This is something that leaves my sewing room.
Maria, one of the things we do to keep it from moving the other pieces is to glue it.
Gluing it makes a world of difference to keep your one piece from shifting
the other. There are people who just want to pin it. First of all, I stab myself over and over and over again. But at the same time, when you're gluing it down, don't get your glue all the way to the edge, because then you gotta stitch through it.
And this glue is hard when it dries.
It pokes holes in my fingers. I have to wear a thimble if I have to stitch through glue.
Right.
So keep your glue on the inside of the shape.
Mm-hmm.
Glue down your layers, and then, generally speaking, it holds still.
It holds pretty still.
Once in a while, I will pin the inside of a really big shape to make myself feel better.
When I'm holding it, kind of stabilize my piece. So I've got several fingers laying flat on it, front and back.
Letting it move.
So I'm not letting it move. This hand is totally a stabilizer for this. And that makes it that helps with keeping it nice and flat.
They can't see when you're like that. Anyway, but Susan, I hope this helps. We are always happy to try and answer questions as much as possible. We are active on Messenger on our page, but if you message me at 10 p.m., please don't expect a response.
Or 7 a.m.
Or 7 a.m. right away. We will get back to you, but, you know.
We're at home with our families, making breakfast and going to bed and stuff.
Homeschooling these days.
Homeschooling.
So
not today, it's Saturday. I know. I was so excited for Saturday. There was no school.
I know. And you know what my husband did this morning? He sat down at his computer for work.
Did you say, dude, it's Saturday. Knock it off. I'm not keeping the kids away. Forget that.
It was only for a minute, but still, I was just like, oh, for the love. No way. Anyway, so that's applique, you guys. So the next thing, she's going to glue, put all these layers onto her background fabric. Mm-hmm. This is her background fabric, or it will be.
It will be.
And like I said, then you get it all appliqued down.
Wow, can you talk
and
to me?
Square it up.
Right.
Always square it up.
Always
square everything up.
Always.
All the time. So I hope this helped.
Yeah.
If it didn't help, I'm sorry.
I mean, if you're local, I will be teaching this class again. My April class, which is going to get rescheduled anyway, is full. But I teach this class all the time.
Several of these in stock because my mom can find anything anywhere, and she sourced them from all over the place and cleaned them up and got them ready to go. So we do have vintage Durabuilt irons on our website. I'll show you how it has this little thingamabob,
so it folds flat,
and then it folds flat, and that comes off, and it fits in the top of Jen's featherweight case. Yep. But it is a legitimate, nice, heavy iron. So it's not one of those little wimpy, small travel irons that doesn't get so hot or gets way too hot. Right. Well, this could get too hot. If you are going to go on eBay or whatever and look for one yourself,
make sure it has a temperature regulator.
You want one with a temperature regulator. Not a... What's the other thing?
It has a little thing that shows you how hot it is. It's like a thermometer.
Yeah.
And the only way to cool it down is to unplug the thing. You don't want that one.
Oh, stitches on the sewing machine, very small, like a 1.8.
When you're piecing it when you're putting the pieces together, yeah, a small stitch, like 1.8.
Anyway, but yeah,
so if you're gonna down a normal stitch.
If you're gonna look for one of these yourself, I should.
There's some other brands like GE is good too. Make sure it has a temperature control.
The temperature control. The ones we have listed for sale, I think all do.
Yeah.
There's ones with like the Bakelite handle and the.
That's how mine home is.
But
no, it's wood.
But this is a fantastic iron and it's great for travel. Yeah, I really think this is 1,000 times easier than freezer paper.
Oh my gosh.
Mostly because I hate freezer. Before I did this, I did raw edge because the other methods I couldn't.
But we have customers who love needle turn and they do these projects with needle turn.
You can do it with freezer paper
needle
if you love
turn
that method.
when I have to. I don't usually do freezer paper because I don't like to. Though I do have a product that's similar to doing freezer paper method that disappears so you don't have to remove the paper.
Lois,
so
our shop,
awesome.
JK Quilts. You can get on our website at jkquilts.com. Follow us on Facebook, Instagram. We've been doing these kind of classes 3 nights a week lately. Our class schedule for next week, I will post tomorrow with a materials list if you want to sew along.
Yep, some of them will be project-based, others are more skill set. This one. If you're interested in doing any of these projects, I did put a link to their Be in My Bonnet resources on our webpage.
Everything
so you
Lori
can
Holt
see
on
all
our
the
website.
quilts she's done before. A lot of them we don't have kits for anymore because they're old.
Well,
but
her stuff just moves through so fast.
But we do have all of the shapes, and you could do any of these quilts with whatever fabrics you like.
I did her original bloom quilt. You can't see it right here.
It's on the table.
It's on the table. Her first sew along, I believe. Bloom was her first sew along with her Sew Simple shapes, and it was done out of
Calico Days.
Calico Days fabric. And I did it with Farm Girl Vintage fabric, which is this one.
Yep.
And I love it.
Oh,
and so you can do them with anything.
Gosh,
on the featherweight. What number are you looking for on the featherweight? This is the Singer 221. Oh, on the 18, right? Where'd you have it
18
listed?
to 20.
Like 18 to 20. Sorry. I was like, what was I going to show them? The houses.
The houses.
Oh!
Our village.
Houses, village. I was
Our village. You have to show them our village. It's still a small village, but it's growing.
If you're new to us, the last 2 weeks we've talked about, last 2 weeks. Last two
classes.
Videos. We're going to make our own, Moda shared their village pattern, and we're going to make our own JK Quilts village to kind of commemorate this not so amazing, but also amazing time that we're all dealing with right now. And in the last 2 days, with my barely any announcement, we had 3 little houses delivered. Chris made this one and signed it. I love it. And Mona embroidered her name with a little flower. And this was Christine. These are 3 of our awesome
people.
Regulars. I'm going to call them regulars.
They're part of our shop family.
They're definitely part of our family. But we want you to be part of our family too. This is Jen's and this is mine. We haven't put our names on them yet.
Nope.
But send us your house if you need the pattern. It's on our website.
Also under resources.
Under resources. We have a lot of things under our resources tab. And one of them is free patterns. This is called Village. Make yourself a house. Mail it to us. Or drop it off at the door if you're local. And I'm going to make a quilt with our village. And so send us your houses.
It's gonna be awesome.
I know we've got several other people.
There are a lot of people that have them on their way that have sent them to us.
So yeah, but that's since, yesterday.
Right.
So that's been fun.
Awesome.
We're super excited to see where this project goes.
Mm-hmm.
But
I'm done with my yellow flower
She
center.
finished her little center.
See, look how much rounder that is.
I can't see that. That was way too far away.
Sorry. It's rounder now.
It does round things out a little bit. Yes, if you don't have a marker, we will write it down for you.
Right.
We will have
if
a
you
marker.
don't have a fabric marker, we'll do it.
So yeah, you don't have to go out and buy one just for this. Just send it to us with your name, and I will write it down. I will be writing mine on with marker. Jen will probably embroider hers elaborately.
I don't know about elaborately.
Yeah, she will. And it'll probably be this whole like Hanson House like thing on the door with a wreath. Who knows?
So I did plan to put the H on the door in monogram.
See? I knew it. She's like that. Okay, guys. We will
see you Tuesday night.
Tuesday night at 7. We'll be here with another fun project.
We made a list, but I don't think we chose something for Tuesday.
Know what that is?
Again, if you have suggestions, feel free to shout those out and send them to us. We came up with a whole bunch this afternoon. However,
oh good, Carrie, I'm so glad.
We would love to
know what you guys want us to do.
We want to make sure we're doing what you guys want us to do.
Because this has been a last minute production since everything changed the last couple weeks. So we're figuring it out as we go, clearly, with the whole camera issue.
Right. So we're clearly photographers.
Yeah.
My fancy cell phone. Yeah.
Oh, good.
But we make it work.
You guys are so welcome. Thank you so much again for joining us again. And we will see you later.
We'll see you virtually speaking.
All right.
It's always fun when we can like wave at cars. It's like, oh, I know you have.
Yeah. Sad. All right. Anyway, have a good Sunday. Take a breather. See you later.
All right.